Right.
And we don't know what went wrong. We are prepared to blame it on China. Not a bad guess, right?
Right.
They jam everything else, and we're all prepared tonight to kick the hell out of them, and they know that because they know everything. So
how is it?
We'll have to see. So let's bring everything up to date. So and we'll go back to some of the things we covered on the earlier show, just in case you didn't see it or watch it. But let's remind you that tomorrow is the beginning of the conclave. Tomorrow, the cardinals who have been spending their time praying, going to mass, and also spending their time discussing, both in formal and informal groups, who they want as the next pope. And so they will tomorrow, I would imagine about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 or 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, because that would be 9, 8, 9, 10 o'clock Rome time. They will march into the Sistine Chapel. They'll go to the smaller chapel off to the left side as you enter. I think it's called the St. Paul Chapel. And I believe they'll have a religious service there. Don't know if they're going to have mass there. Then the doors will be opened. They've been locked. The doors of the Sistine Chapel will be opened, and they will march into the Sistine Chapel. They'll first march through the public area of the Sistine Chapel, which is separated by a gate from the inner, well, the church, the actual church, the chapel. And they will, of course, be sitting below and having on the side of them probably one of the greatest works of art ever done by any human being, Michelangelo's creation. The centerpiece is, of course, that unbelievable depiction of God creating Adam, with the hand reaching out, just about touching, and the anticipatory look on Adam's face as life is being brought to him by an unbelievably powerful. Did Michelangelo, who was a sculptor, because he wanted powerful images, muscular, powerful images. So when you get to see all this, look for those images. You're going to see a God that could probably. Well, I don't want to get in trouble, by making some kind of a stupid comment, but I mean, he looks like he looks like a wrestler. Well, so much discussion about who the candidates are. There's an Italian expression. I'm going to get the Italian or the Italian or Latin expression that says, "He who enters as the next pontiff comes out a cardinal." Usually, it's a surprise. For example, was it 7 years ago, the last or 8, 9, when Pope Francis was selected, he wasn't on the list of 10, for example, on CNN or Fox. But it's because they keep the secrets of the conclave pretty good, not completely good. He had been the number 2 choice when Benedict was selected 7 years earlier. So he was picked pretty quickly. He was like the alternative to Benedict already. So they went in having almost made him Pope 5-6 years earlier. So we didn't know that. So now you say, well, that's great. They kept that secret. But how do I know that he was number two? I shouldn't know that. Somebody, even the Cardinals leak. And I don't mean the St. Louis Cardinals. I mean the Cardinals leak. We should know that he was number two. Every part of that, it's like the seal of confession. It's supposed to be all secret. And because they don't want anyone inhibited from expressing their view of it is the more spiritual ones. I imagine all of them, but the more spiritual ones would articulate this better. Their view of it is that they're being guided by the Holy Spirit. That they're searching in their prayers and in their soul and in their meditations and for the Holy Spirit to give them guidance on who should be the successor of St. Peter. Right back, and it looks like everything is working fine. U.S. Army Major Scott Smiley paid a high price serving our nation. Scott was leading his platoon in Iraq when a blast sent shrapnel through his eyes, leaving him blind and temporarily paralyzed. Scott would become the first blind active duty military officer before medically retiring years later. Thanks to friends like you, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation gave Scott and his family a mortgage-free, specially adapted smart home. Show your support for America's heroes now. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers.
Are you ready for some action?
I'm ready for action.
Get the Elite TV plan only through the portal. 218 channels, and it's only $69.95 a month.
Wow.
Including your free portal.
That's cheaper than everyone else.
Your favorite sports, movies, news, even daytime dramas. We're talking about ESPN, OAN, Newsmax, channels you can't get anymore in certain areas.
Compared to the competition, this is a way better deal.
Endless selection. Not to mention all the free music channels. There's over 700 premium and classic movies all ready to go.
Wow.
Plus, they got catch-up TV that allows you to go back and watch what you've missed or want to watch again. Cut your cable in half and get twice as much for free.
Way more channels for half the cost.
After the first year, the subscription then drops to $57.95 monthly, where you change or upgrade anytime. Go to QUXNow.com and get yours today. Use promo code RUDY. Act fast.
Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this pristine, I call it a laboratory. It's not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep grain, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because they like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO. You should know all Arabica beans, no Robusto, all Arabica. They're going to go into the roaster, and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's coffee. Welcome back to America's Mayor Live from Palm Beach. So, I told you that Trump's position on Iran seems to be hardening to a no nuclear, which raises the possibility that we're going to have to do an attack, because that's a tough one for Iran to agree to. I mean, really, it's a tough one to agree to, because they're just pretending that they want the peaceful use of nuclear power. I mean, Trump hit the nail right on the head when he said they don't need it. the oil. They've got, they've got more oil to take care of them for the next couple hundred years. So this nuclear thing, I mean, everyone knows why they want nuclear weapons. They want nuclear weapons because they believe Israel has nuclear weapons. And how are they going to destroy Israel if they don't have nuclear weapons? Because if they try to destroy Israel, Israel could take them out, in a day. So his position also, the president's position on Ukraine, is starting to really move against Putin. You can tell from the president's language that he's very, because there are so many unnecessary murders going on now. You saw that attack that we showed you the other day on Kiev, on a civilian. Everybody makes a big deal out of the Israelis killing civilians, which happens as collateral damage. You can be sure it happens as collateral damage because the last thing Israel wants is some high count of civilians because they know it's used against them. And of course, what Hamas wants are as many civilians killed as possible in order to gain world approval for their murderous terrorist organization. Those attacks that you see by Russia are not on the Ukrainian military. They're on Ukrainian civilians. Now, Kiev is not a military base. It's the capital of Ukraine. Kharkiv is not a military base. It's the second biggest city in Ukraine. And one that excuse me, I have to take some of that Trump drink. So we have now sent to them, or we have redirected to them. We don't know. I mean, we've already given them Patriot missile systems. So when I say Patriot missile system, I do not mean a missile. This is $1 billion deal, a Patriot missile system. We are redirecting one from Israel to Ukraine, which is functioning. Now you need 90 people to operate this, 90 trained people. And we are also redirecting a second one. It's a little hazy as to where it's coming from. We have, how many do we have deployed? It is believed, again, this is all non-confirmed, 186 of these. That means we have $186 billion worth of Patriot missile systems deployed. Now, their main function is to protect. Their defense more than offense. This will, for example, there is one deployed over Kiev, which is why the city's not destroyed already. They're going to get 2 more, but it also can be used offensively. They also have, Biden originally gave this to them, but didn't let them use it. They also have Javelin missiles and other missiles that can go way beyond Moscow, but they haven't been able to use it. There's been a prohibition by first Biden, carried forward, or at least Trump has never lifted it. All he's got to do is say the word, and Putin's going to start paying a very heavy price. He's also been given yesterday a very, very, I don't know how the sanctions can be stronger than what he did to them when he was president 4 or 5 years ago. But these sanctions are quite a bit stronger than that. And they'll sanction countries that do business with Russia. So it'll be an extra sanction on China, for example. And they will not be able to, and it will sanction any financial institution that does any of these transactions. That it's the sanctions are crippling with an economy that's already in shambles. I mean, the Russian economy is in shambles for any number of reasons, including the expenses of the war. If we cut them off, And we also cut off their oil transactions. They're going to be in very, very serious trouble. And I think he's lost patience with them. So I think the combination of the weapons that we've given Ukraine so that they can get through the summer and the sanctions show that Trump is at the point. Trump is at the point that he's had it with Putin. I mean, let's get this war over with. I mean, we're killing people for nothing now. So let's see what happens. The mineral deal, as we pointed out last night, is not being covered substantively. It is an absolutely game-changing agreement, game-changing with regard to China, because it gives us access to the rare earth minerals that China thinks it has a monopoly on. Now, it may very well be that Ukraine has either almost as much or more of these rare earth minerals than China, because China's monopoly is not just the rare earth minerals in China. It's gone and bought up rare earth minerals in other countries. You know where it's bought the most? In Ukraine. You know what this agreement does? It kicks them out. Now, there, Zelensky is really playing a little game. Zelensky's already kicked them out. Zelensky kicked them out a year ago because China is funding Russia. Right? So they've been without those rare earth minerals for over a year now. But now it's in the agreement that Ukraine will do no business with China. But that's like, that's like agreeing to something you agree with. They don't want to do business with China because China is China is the only reason Russia is able to afford this war. So this will make us immediately competitive with China with regard to rare earth minerals, which means we don't need all of them right now. We need them over the next 5 to 10 years, as we have to produce extraordinary amounts of energy in order to. We used to think to fuel the electric vehicles, but really to fuel these gigantic quantum computers that are going to be necessary for all of the artificial intelligence, which of course has a military application. I mean, there are people who have written articles and books saying this is no longer just an arms race. This is an AI race. If you win the arms race, but you lose the technology race, the technology will be able to pretty much compromise your arms. So you're going to have to win both. And we will lose it, the technology race. Immediately, first thing he did when he came into office was make the deal with North Korea, with Taiwan, so that Taiwan is now making in the United States the very sophisticated chips where they were controlling about 98% of the market. They're going to move a very substantial amount of that to Arizona and other parts of the United States. And that's a very, very wise decision. First of all, it avoids tariffs. But more importantly, it's a protection for Taiwan, too, should they be attacked by China. If, God forbid, China were to prevail, I'm sure Taiwan will destroy those facilities. Well, now they'll have them backed up in the United States. So these deals that are being made have, the press covers them so superficially. These are extraordinarily complex deals that have 4 or 5 parts to them. That mineral deal has 4 or 5 parts to it. They don't even understand the first part of it because they don't want to. They don't want to. They don't want to because because the fact is he's doing extraordinary things. This is absolutely extraordinary that he's been able to in such a short period of time make up for so much of our negligence. And the same thing is true with tariffs. We haven't been hurt by the tariffs yet, because most of them haven't gone into effect. Instead, he said today we've gotten about 10 trillion. I looked the other day, and I had to stop reading, it was so long, at the investments that have been made in the United States since the day of his inauguration, with the first big one being the one that I mentioned from Taiwan, which now turns out to be $1 trillion. It was originally 500 billion. It is absolutely, he said it's about 10 trillion, but they haven't counted it up. Okay, I would say, grant him a little exaggeration. It clearly is about 3 or 4 trillion. I mean, that is a ridiculous amount of money in a 2 or 3 month period of time. And it isn't just money, it's moving entire automotive companies to the United States. You know, he's trying, I mean, basically said it in front of Carney today that he wants to take, I mean, the guy's got balls, I'll tell you, it really does. Carney is sitting there, he's like, well, I want to take all your, I don't want any of your cars. I don't want any cars from Canada. What do I want cars from Canada for? We can make cars. Yeah, I'll buy things I can't make, but I want my car companies back. And if I don't get them back, I'm going to put a 50% tariff on them so you won't be able to sell them in the United States. The tariff on some of the Chinese items now is 254%. It sounds to me like you got to pay more than the thing is worth in tariffs. And China is suffering mightily from it. Now, you should also realize that if things turn around with Ukraine, and as a result of Trump's harder line and sanctions, which I don't think Putin can deal with, the sanctions, and the war is over, the troops that he's using, most of them have come from the border with NATO, mainly the Balkans. So Estonia announced yesterday that it's putting together, and they have the Baltic defense line, the Balkan defense line, Baltic defense line. Now, the reason this is important, if this were Lithuania doing it, it would be important, but it wouldn't be as significant as Estonia doing it. So the 3 main countries here, and it's eventually going to definitely include Finland, since Finland has been threatened with nuclear attack, and Sweden have been threatened with nuclear attack by Medvedev. If it were Latvia or Lithuania, it would be important and it would be valuable, but it wouldn't be the same. So the three main Baltic countries are, and in order of allegiance to Russia, or the percentage of Russian nationals in the country, the number 1 country with Russian nationals is Estonia. The number 2 country is Latvia. Number 3 country is Lithuania. Or in reverse order, the countries that are the most hostile to China are Lithuania first, Latvia second. Estonia has always been rather soft on Russia because they have so many Russians. So if you want to go back and read the Cold War book, maybe one of the greatest novels, war novels or Cold War novels, Hunt for the Red October by Clancy, you might remember that the Russian admiral who defects to the United States is not Russian. He's Lithuanian. But Lithuanians had to serve in the Soviet Army and Navy. So if you remember, Ryan, who's the protagonist in all of the Clancy novels, Ryan is able to figure this guy out because he knows how much secretly Lithuania hated the Soviets. So the fact that it's Estonia is really important because the only hope Russia has for an ally there is Estonia. And they've had it. They've absolutely had it. And they are very worried that when the war is over with Ukraine, they're going to bring the troops right on the border of Estonia and maybe try to take it over like they did with Ukraine. So they are going to put together, and I hope, it doesn't say it, but I hope with our major involvement, they're going to put together a major defense line. And I would imagine Poland will contribute to this. We have to learn, and I hope we are, our State Department is, because our State Department is made up of the most intellectually rigid assholes that were ever created. And that's in a Republican or Democratic administration. When you think about the fact that they've been wrong about everything, right? They haven't been right since the Second World War. We won the Cold War because of Ronald Reagan, not because of the State Department. If we're up to the State Department, we'd probably all be speaking Russian now. And now, Chinese. So Estonia leading this effort means that Russia has lost its one favorable country in that entire region, which means Estonia has really turned on them because of what happened with Ukraine. Putin doesn't realize probably will historically be the biggest mistake of his career, having done that. He turned Europe against him. He turned Estonia against him. He turned the other half of Ukraine. Half of Ukraine was favorable to Russia. Whenever they voted, it was 50-50 between the pro-Western and the pro-Ukrainian. Now it's 80-10 and 10 who don't know. So the defense minister, Hanno Pevkur, announced today that we're beginning the building of the Baltic defense line, which will include around 600 bunkers in pre-positioned locations along the Baltic border. Now, remember, each one of these countries are NATO countries. If Russia shoots at them, we're at war under the NATO treaty, Article 5. Now, also, that's the reason Finland and Sweden were threatened, because they've become part of NATO. Finland always remained somewhat neutral. And Sweden, of course, was known for its neutrality. But because of what happened with Ukraine, they joined NATO. So now Medvedev has threatened them with, we may have to use nuclear weapons. Somebody should take a little nuclear weapon and shove it down his throat. That should be the diplomacy involved here. Nobody should be threatening nuclear war. I mean, that's an outrage. That nuclear war? Use of nuclear power? Because you want to grab land? So here is one of the real outrages that makes modern America almost not America anymore. Nobody, no newspaper, television station is covering what's going on in China. First of all, China is having tremendous problems with the tariff. Their export level is the lowest it's been in, as I said, 8 years. It's below 50, which is at could be below break-even point already. Number two, China is having protests, as we showed you last night, and videos don't lie. China is having protests in at least 4 places that we know of, and Hong Kong, against Xi Jinping. And it's really on the economy. And they're not buying the fact that Trump is causing it by the tariffs because they've been going through it for 5 years. And they see him as the cause of their inability of their economy to grow anymore, because it's a command economy. It's a top-down, rigid command economy. Remember, in between Mao and Xi Jinping, we had some chairmen that were almost really contradictory, but at least it made a difference. They would consider themselves capitalists, but communists. So they were economic capitalists, not socialists, but they were political communists, like Deng Xiaoping and several of the interim people. But when Xi took over, he completely has changed all that and has very, very strictly enforced Mao, you could say Marxist or communist doctrine, but as interpreted by Mao. What does that mean? What that means is the state owns everything. There is, like, if you say, oh, I'm doing business with a private company in China, like hell you are. You're doing business with China. China has the right at any time to come in and take anything, look at anything. If they gain any intellectual property, like if you go into business with a Chinese company and you share your partners and you share your intellectual property with them with an agreement that it's going to be protected, as you would, if you were doing business in the United States or England or whatever, that's not worth the paper it's written on. The Chinese law supersedes that, and they can come in and take all of the intellectual property because it belongs to them, because the company ultimately belongs to them. So there's no such thing really as a private company in Russia, which is why it's disgraceful that American companies do business there. But a lot of them are leaving now. Maybe the NBA could. What? You said Russia. Oh, I didn't mean Russia. No, Russia is actually easier to do business in. It is. It's easier to do business than China.
Most of them left by now.
Oh yeah, but I mean because of the war. But I mean Russia opportunistically interferes. China systemically interferes. That's sort of the difference. So if Russia's not interested for its own purposes in your area of business, there may be corruption, but they're going to stay out of it. And they don't necessarily have the same need to steal intellectual property. China has a great need to do that because they are completely unable to create. They can mimic, but they can't create. So instead of covering that, the Wall Street Journal today does an article talking about how China's 10-year plan to become more competitive is working, based on the Chinese analysis. Well, that isn't worth the paper it's written on. I don't even know how this newspaper can write that. Well, of course they're going to say it's working. Well, does a communist government ever report anything negative to the government? And then what the hell are all the protests about if it's working? Then they have another article, but they don't examine the implications of it, saying China has now stopped giving out any statistics, which I guess doesn't matter because they never were truthful anyway. Not long ago, anyone could comb through a wide range of official data from China. It was useless, but you could do it if you wanted. Then it started to disappear. Land sales measure, foreign investment data, unemployment indicators have gone dark. Now, why would you hide unemployment numbers if they're not horrendous? Which is why they're having protests. So, and why is it? I can look through the entire Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and all these toilet papers, and they're not even telling me about the protests going on in China. Or how about this? This is even more interesting, but you got to go to something like the Epoch Times to find it. Or business. What's the website we want everybody to go to? Business Basics. Get the exact number of that, because they've got 4 right now, right on their website. They've got 4 great documentaries on how the deal with Ukraine has broken the Chinese monopoly on rare earth minerals. They've got one that is pretty much mirroring this article in Epoch Times by Leo Tim. Chinese military purges may hint an unraveling of CCP. Now, what that means is, over the last 5 months, 3 highly placed commanders of the Chinese army have been replaced. They were all allies of Xi Jinping. Now, and also then some political allies of his have been removed. What we don't know is, has he turned on his pals because they're not sufficiently supportive of his being a dictator? Because remember, he made himself president for life. He's accumulated a lot of power to himself. China was always a dictatorship, but since Mao, it pretty much was like a consultative dictatorship. The premier or the chairman of the party ran the country, but he ran it with 4 or 5 other people. Xi is running it all by himself. He's a singular power. He patted himself right on Mao, and he is the most dedicated communist since Mao. Now, this is very strange because Mao put his father in prison. These people are enormously complicated. They're very worthy adversaries, that's for sure. And I can tell you from the point of view of their intelligence network, having learned the Russian intelligence network when I was in the Reagan administration and in the Justice Department, working with the FISA court, I can tell you that the Russians were good and the British were excellent. Nothing like the Chinese. The Chinese have completely infiltrated our country, which is the reason why Trump, when he put the tariff on foreign films and said it was for national security purposes, and they all made fun of him. How could films be for national security purposes? They're the jackasses. You know why it's for national security purposes? Because China is probably one of the biggest stakeholders in Hollywood. China owns major pieces of about 80% of the major film companies. It has enough power so that you haven't seen an anti-Red China movie in 20 years. And even in fiction, and even in these ridiculous things I never watch, where they have these wars between these crazy things and all. If any of it looks like the Chinese are the bad guys, they switch it all around and the Chinese become the good guys, and the Americans become the bad guys. I mean, this is very, very subtle propaganda, and that's why they bought up Hollywood, so they can do this. And even if it's not their movie, there's such a big player in Hollywood that they could exercise that power. So cutting off foreign movies is not only a great economic move to save the movie industry in America, but it keeps them out of what can be a device for propaganda. Movies, television. I mean, how do you do propaganda? That's how you do it. So if you read this article in the Epoch Times, you'll see that there's been a very suspicious pattern over the last 6 or 7 months of people being removed, which either indicates that he is trying to accumulate incredible dictatorial power, or they're trying to move his allies out so they can move him out. And since nobody really knows what's going on in China, and it's like guesswork, even more than it used to be. I remember when the Soviet Union was the Soviet Union, we used to try to figure out who's like, let's go back to Khrushchev. So every May Day they have a parade. They just had it. And that's why Putin did the ceasefire, so he could have his parade. He didn't want to kill anybody while he was celebrating how Russia really won the Second World War. We'll go over that sometime too. So they used to look at Khrushchev, right, who was the premier standing there, and then they'd look at who was on his right, who was on his left, and how close were you to Khrushchev. And then they'd look back at the picture last year and see how it moved. Like, who's gone? Who's been added? This guy used to stand here. Now he's over there. What happened to him? And that's how you would figure out the hierarchy of Russia, because whatever they put out on paper was a big lie. But we would figure out by where they stood. And also it gave them, so if you were standing on Khrushchev's left or right, internationally, you became a big shot. That's pretty much what China does, except they're even more secretive. So I would suggest reading this article because it'll give you a lot of information. Now, Epoch Times began as a Chinese newspaper. And some of the people have been killed in China. They were part of the Tiananmen Square. They were part of supporting the Falun Gong movement. Those are the people who have. It's a kind of a combination of a. They love to call it a cult, like MEK is a cult. But what it really is a way of life. It's you could call it a religion. But actually, it's a way of life. It's a way of meditation. And if you've read any of their books to inform yourself, are they in fact a cult and crazy people, like China propaganda says, or are they true reformers? What you'll find out is basically it's a way of life as opposed to a religion. And the way of life is meditation and exercise. And then its principles are it is a reaction to communism. Its principles are, brotherly love and caring for people. And so hence, in 1999, they tried to wipe them all out, tried to destroy them all. They didn't succeed. So now what they do is they use them. You know what they use them for? Organs. They take their organs and sell them. So they'll go grab 50 Falun Gong members and they'll pull out their kidneys and they'll sell them all over the world. Now, you don't have to believe me. You can believe a report done for the government of the United Kingdom. Of course, the UN would never do it because China owns the UN. We pay for it, but China owns it, which is what Trump is trying to stop. So Falun Gong has probably the best information inside China of anything you're going to find in the United States. I'm sorry, not Falun Gong. Epoch Times, which is very supportive of the Falun Gong movement, and therefore gets attacked as being cultish. Even the New York Times has attacked their major spectacular. See if I can show it to you. This is a beautiful, beautiful. They created a beautiful show called let's see. Here it is. Shen Yun. Shen Yun is performed probably 80 times a year in the United States. And it is a combination of dance and music. And it was created because part of the Cultural Revolution and part of the aim of communism is to wipe out the culture of your nation. Xi Jinping is not Chinese. He's a communist. And communism doesn't allow nationalism. It tries to destroy your history and your culture and your religion, so your full and complete allegiance will be to communism, which is what they've done in China. So these are things that these beautiful ancient dances and music, and it is not performed in China. Now it has become enormously popular, but the New York Times attacks it as it's a cult. It's a cult like performing Beethoven's Ninth Symphony is a cult. But don't tell me that the New York Times doesn't work for China. The beauty of ancient China before communism. So what they are doing is they're performing artistic works, mostly ballet, but also music, that goes back to China of 100 years ago. It's their Bach, their Beethoven, their Prokofiev, their Balanchine, their all of which is banned in China. So China goes nuts with these people. I think it's killed some of them. So this is a major, major war, not a Cold War that's going on between the United States and China right now. And the unfortunate part of it, the American people are not being informed of it. I mean, this is a war to take over your country and to take over our civilization. And they don't want to tell you about it because they've compromised so many Americans. Tariffs. I mean, you would think that tariffs are some kind of evil demon, like from The Omen, or what was that, Rosemary's Baby. I mean, tariffs are just, oh my God, tariff. Have a tariff, it's going to destroy the country. The tariffs are an economic tool that it can be used stupidly or wisely. That can be enormously effective if you're dealing with somebody who's being unfair to you and you want to straighten it out. Or it can be completely unnecessary and useless and destroy free trade if you don't need it. And there's no indication at all that Trump wants to use it if he doesn't need it. He's more than willing to do 0-0. I do not get the Wall Street Journal. If you want to talk about a cult, the Wall Street Journal is a tariff cult. I mean, they miss the biggest piece of this, which is you can't have free trade if countries are operating by different sets of rules. It has to be the same set of rules. Then you have free trade. So, for example, how did China get the rare earth monopoly? People think, well, China has more rare earth minerals than anyone. It probably doesn't. It is conceivable Ukraine has more. It's conceivable we have more. We just haven't looked for it. So China did look for it, and China did find it, but it doesn't have enough. So what it's done is it takes its and it wants other countries to be reliant on them for rare earth. So first of all, it buys up rare earth all over the world, like it did in Ukraine. And then it sells it at below market. The government subsidizes it. So the government might subsidize it to the point of, a 25% reduction. So it'll undercut anybody else who's trying to sell rare earth. And it therefore destroys any incentive for people to raise the capital to do the work to mine the rare earth, because it's going to undersell you. Exactly the way the classic monopolies of the turn of the 20th century operate. They get control of shoes, and then they would sell shoes for half what it really costs and put all the small shoemakers out of business, right? That's a classic monopoly. That is exactly what China is doing, and that is exactly the opposite of free trade. That's unfair trade. So before you can have free trade, you have to have fair trade. You have to have a set of rules that we're both following. I'm not subsidizing, you're not subsidizing. And we are in competition with each other as to who can be more efficient and more cost effective. And the consumer will get the benefit of which one of us is better at it, or which one of us is more geographically closer, so the cost of transportation are less. All of that has been thrown off because the United States has forgotten that free trade is negated by unfair trade practices. So it lets almost every country that does business with us up until now knows that they can use unfair trade practices with us because we won't do anything about it. Even our friends, Italy, UK, Canada, and Mexico, we're doing it big time. And what he is saying is, no tariff for me, no tariff for you, and let's compete. So the reality is that even the Wall Street Journal today has an article saying, well, maybe we exaggerated. It really isn't going to be a tariff Armageddon. The world's not going to end. It seems like these things are working out. Well, they sure are. I mean, we've got massive investments in the United States as a result of those tariffs. They haven't had to be imposed. Even Carney, who you say, well, the United States has really kicked around Canada. It sure didn't look that way today.
Oh man.
Right?
Right.
The guy was hardly. He said he was going to come in and fight with Trump, and he was very charming and very funny.
Right. It's I guess what's the approach you take when you go to the Oval Office? The president's there with all the cameras, right?
It is not the approach Zelensky took. I will tell you that.
Well, this guy is a very, very skilled banker and diplomat, and Zelensky's a little punk.
Yeah, that definitely shows.
So here's the interesting one: the tariff on the foreign movies,
Yeah. Well,
which I think
clear,
is to get at China really, more than anything else.
right.
But it's also to get jobs back. You know, a lot of these have two purposes. Anytime it's involving anything with China, it has a set national security purpose,
Right.
Or Russia.
And foreign films are for sissies, right? That's kind of the general idea.
What?
Foreign films are for sissies.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that accomplishes that goal.
It's for people. No, it's for people that want to make believe they're very intellectual.
Yeah.
It's like they have a movie theater they have a movie theater in Manhattan on 58th Street, of course, from the Plaza.
I know exactly.
The Arts Cinema. Yeah,
They think of themselves as very.
I won't say which one, but one of my wives used to like to go there. I think she wanted to have people see her go in.
Yeah, like telling people that.
Oh, look how smart she is.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
goes to the art cinema. And I got to look at some stupid French movie where all they're doing is tongue kissing for the whole movie.
And smoking.
Yeah, smoking and tongue kissing.
Well, you're right, though. And people like to talk about the fact that they go to the.
And every one of these movies, at the end, somebody dies, commits suicide. Numerous people commit suicide. Every one of these French, even Italian movies, they're all so depressing.
Very depressing and sad, but
And they're all about, fucked up people.
But like you said, I mean, when you were mayor, didn't you?
I want the Hunt for the Red October. That's what I want.
Oh, that's a good movie.
Yeah, come on.
It's kind of foreign.
Huh?
A big part of this is to encourage.
even foreign movies like Leone used to do, what do they call it, spaghetti westerns?
Spaghetti westerns.
Yeah.
Spaghetti westerns. Italian, because what, they were directed by Italians.
Yeah, by Leone. And that's where
the idea of the American West.
but then he did a lot of American ones too, some of the great ones, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yes.
That's Sergio Leone.
Any of these filmed in Sedona, you think?
I bet.
Arizona?
And they always had great music too. You know, they always had that very compelling music. And, yeah.
I'm already envisioning that.
but it had
Just
it had
in
a
the desert, right? That sound.
it had a plot. It had some kind of plot.
Yeah. So will this lead to more?
Now they make movies, and I'm frightened. We're going to have a pope that's half man and half woman. I mean, in conclave, I'm going to tell you the ending because it's such a.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, of course I should spoil it. Everybody's going to see it anyway, just to find out how the conclave takes place.
Right.
So they end up electing a guy who has a penis and ovaries as pope. Guy's walking around as pope, but he's got penis and ovaries. And the guy's such a rat. He doesn't tell anybody until after he gets elected. He doesn't think that's important. And nobody points that out. I mean, this guy was selected. The old pope, they don't tell you much about the old pope, but he sounds like he's a little flaky, like Pope Francis was. And he makes this guy, for some reason, he makes this guy who comes from some Asian country. They kind of keep it unspecific. God forbid it would be China, right? He makes this guy a cardinal, but doesn't tell anybody. And he just keeps it, he has it written up next to his bed. So the guy shows up out of nowhere. No other cardinal knows him. And they accept that they have the credentials and they accept them. And one of the bishops or monsignors who was on the staff sort of vetted him. And in vetting him, he found out that he spent time at a hospital in Sweden or somewhere that does sex changes. And he comes to the Camerlengo who runs it because they're not supposed to get information from the outside. And he says, I want to give you this information. And the Camerlengo, following the rules, that you can't tell me. So now they elect him. And when it's over, then they can talk. So the investigator comes to the cardinal in charge. He's already been selected as pope. And he says, I got to tell you something. This guy was in this hospital for sex changes, very famous hospital in Sweden. He was there for 2 months. So the guy now is getting ready to put the robes on and come out as Habemus the Pope. So the cardinal in charge, called the Camerlengo, comes in and sees him all along. And he tells him about the report. He says, now you got to tell me the truth. And the guy says, I thought I was a man, but I always felt like maybe I was a woman. The guy's the Pope now. but I also thought I was a woman. And then I had an appendectomy, and they saw the doctor doing the appendectomy just happened to notice I have ovaries.
And they explain in the movie. This is all explained.
Yeah,
More,
I have.
It is a movie.
This is the modern movies.
It's a movie.
yeah, it's Hollywood.
It's Hollywood.
I think it was made in Italy. The guy, I guess the surgeon was really he's taking out the appendix and he's, holy shit, the guy's got ovaries. How many times do you see a guy with ovaries?
That has happened.
Well, I guess it's happened one in 50 million times.
How much has happened?
Yeah, one, but it had still be a big surprise. I bet the surgeon had never seen that before.
Oh yeah, you'd be
Yeah.
telling your
Here I am doing. I mean, an appendectomy is not exactly a brain surgeon, right? It's like a regular stomach. So you're doing the appendectomy, and holy crap, this guy's got ovaries. So now the guy goes through a whole thing, and he says he wants to get his ovaries. You can't make this up, right? He wants. This priest or bishop now wants to get his ovaries removed. That's why he goes there. But then after very severe reflection and meditation and prayer, he decides he's going to be what God made him.
Hey, I respect that.
Yeah, great, but don't make him pope because he sounds like a very confused guy.
Yeah, I feel like this guy needs to disclose a little more before, like, you know.
So he's the new pope for the conclave, which is why Hollywood is useless, right? I mean, it's just this is ridiculous. This is what the movies are. This is ridiculous. This is completely
But
ridiculous.
would you recommend it to those that kind of want to get a taste for the
Why not? I mean, go watch it and you'll learn most of the rules. They have most of the rules, and they are quite dramatic and interesting. You know, the way they crush the ring, and then they go to his apartment and they seal it up, and they put an old-fashioned seal on it with the wax.
Now, Mayor, did you?
Oh yeah, they break the.
Was he staying in a more austere papal apartment in the movie to mimic Francis? I think he was, right? And do you remember that part of the movie where they go
It's
to
a simple room. Yeah.
It's simple. It's not the
Well,
papal-
I mean, they all stay in the St. Martha. I don't know what they call it. They have an Italian name for it, but it's a dormitory, a gigantic. It's not like a beautiful hotel, but it's not like a piece of. It's not like it's not like the No-Tell Motel either.
Right. But the papal apartment's gorgeous.
Well, the papal apartment's on the other side of the Vatican. The papal apartments are on the formal side on the side of the Sistine Chapel, and they're beautiful, and they're the ones that he walks out of when he. I mean, they're catty corner, so they look out on the square, and then they look in on the inner part of the Vatican. But he never stayed there. Now they locked it up anyway, but he kept a place at St. Martha's. He took one of the rooms that a visiting cardinal would take. And so did Benedict.
Oh.
So while Benedict was alive until 2 years ago, there were two popes there.
Really, Benedict? I wouldn't have. Oh, after his.
When Benedict resigned, he went to the mountain retreat that the Pope has
Yes.
and stayed there until they selected a new Pope. And then he came back and they really gave him like a little suite in the St. Martha's residence.
Well, it's probably good to be able to pick his brain here and there. It's like.
Well, he was a genius. Ratzinger was a genius.
And then.
Ratzinger was probably IQ wise. He was a great theologian and also reputed to be absolutely brilliant. I mean, he was John Paul II's chief advisor. I mean, he was. So they would say he was the equivalent of what the Secretary of State.
He was
The Secretary of State now, who's one of the front runners.
yeah.
Yeah.
They're saying he is a front runner. Who they is?
Oh, I know.
Who's they
Right?
when you hear that?
Now his big problem. I was listening to Bishop Barron last night, and Bishop Barron has probably one of the biggest Word of God, I think it's called. It's one of the biggest religious podcasts in the world, and he is the bishop of Rochester, Minnesota.
Really?
Yeah.
A lot of Rochester.
He used to be the auxiliary bishop, of course, in Los Angeles, but he's very, very articulate and very smart and very balanced. You couldn't say, it'd be hard to say whether he was a liberal or a conservative. And he likes to avoid that. And he makes a very good point. He says the church isn't political, it's spiritual. And he said, what I think they should be looking for is a man who believes, of course, without any reservation in the resurrection of Jesus Christ, but also can preach it the best, who can bring the revelation to the people the best and guard it and protect it. And then everything will work itself out. Sort of, and anyway, I mean, he believes as the Holy Spirit makes the decision. So what we're doing is, it's like going to a monastery and you're looking into your soul and hoping that the Holy Spirit will guide you to the right vote. That's the way the true believers kind of relate to it. Now, I think Barron, who, as I said, is pretty much middle of the road, favors the African cardinal, Sarah, Cardinal Sarah. Now, but also maybe a little bit, he had been a little bit maybe too contentious with Francis. Not to the point where Francis ever disciplined him, but he sort of went a little batty on a couple of things, and a couple of them went really batty on. And this may stop the Secretary of State from getting it. He's the guy who made a deal with China, which is disgraceful. Even Barron said it. Basically said, I couldn't vote for him. An American couldn't vote for him because of our knowledge of Chinese communism. I mean, China has a role in the selection of bishops.
Sure, but what if that was the best deal they could arrange in China? I mean, you got to be able to carry the word to China.
No, you don't. Let them kill you. I mean, that's the first 20 popes got killed. They don't get to compromise the faith. Let them kill you, and then tell the whole world you're being killed. Look, the Catholic Church.
Going to be there in China to save everyone.
China would have a hard time killing a bunch of Catholic bishops, given that there are even more Catholics than there are Chinese.
Oh
China, plus, we don't know that China can really fight a war, right?
No, I think maybe Pope Julius III might be better than China.
I'll take a couple of those Swiss guards.
Oh, Julius was a great Julius was a great general. I don't know what kind of pope he was. He got the Sistine Chapel built, but he was a great general.
My understanding is those guys in those colorful uniforms, the Swiss Guard, are highly trained.
They're hardcore.
Are hardcore and highly trained. And not how they would appear. They appear to be kind of funny looking, but apparently they go through all sorts of training.
Maybe we should use them as
Secret Service. They got to be certain height. They got to be a bunch of requirements.
and maybe we should contract with them for the Secret Service.
Right.
Oh, I would love that.
There'd be no like Butler.
They'd give us like some culture, like.
Would they dress? Would we keep the
we
dress?
Yeah, and that's actually
They don't always wear that.
That is 200 individual pieces on that uniform. 200 individual.
What does that mean? 200 individual.
Like different components. 200 different components of the outfit.
So that takes quite a while to put on it.
Well, not to put on necessarily, but to put
Assemble?
together, to assemble.
Once it's assembled, maybe it's on and off.
But you got to be strong and tall.
So do you want Mayor? By the time
Trump tax cuts. You know what the poll yesterday showed? You know how many people support the Trump tax cuts being extended? 8 out of 10. 80%. And the Democrats are against it. The Democrats are also against naming the Gulf of Mexico after their own country. Who do they represent? Why? That should be a simple one. I mean, it is our country. It's mostly on our border. It's ridiculous that it's named the Gulf of Mexico. And if they would like to call it the Gulf of Mexico below America, let them. But the Democrats are against it. Why would any American be against calling it the Gulf of America?
Just appreciate tradition, right? Isn't that?
So just think of what they do. They're against calling it the Gulf of America. They want to bring back wife beaters, human traffickers,
New York,
rapists. Yeah, in New York.
They're releasing cop killers.
Oh, in New York. Well, how about let's take a look at this. Well, we're going to take a short break, and then we'll cover a bunch of items real quick, so you're up on everything, okay? But we got to cover this kid. U.S. Army Major Scott Smiley paid a high price serving our nation. Scott was leading his platoon in Iraq when a blast sent shrapnel through his eyes, leaving him blind and temporarily paralyzed. Scott would become the first blind active duty military officer before medically retiring years later. Thanks to friends like you, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation gave Scott and his family a mortgage-free, specially adapted smart home. Show your support for America's heroes now. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel. Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this pristine, I call it a laboratory,
not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep grain, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because we like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO. You should know all Arabica beans, no Robusto, all Arabica. They're going to go into the roaster and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's coffee.
I mean, we were just saying this is America's Made Alive. One of the dumbest things was creating Pakistan in the first place. To create a country based on a religion. Now, the only other country I can think of that's based completely on a religion is Iran, but it's a dictatorship. I don't know what Pakistan is. But the problem with it is like Bosnia Herzegovina, and it's a haven for Islamic extremist terrorists, because it becomes like a Muslim. It's a Muslim country, and even you look at countries like the holy country, the holy lands of the Muslim world. They are Muslim because they weren't put there. Pakistan was not a country. Pakistan was created in 1947 or 1949. Didn't exist before that. Pakistan should be called Islam land, because that's what it is. So let's cover the things that you need to know. First of all, you should know that the president of Mexico, who's getting a great deal of praise because she's cooperating with the president, did turn down our offer to bring our military in and destroy their cartels, which tells you something about the control the cartels have. Because if I were the president of Mexico, I would gladly take that help. And it would just be in that 3-mile area. If I could get rid of those cartels, I'd have my own government back. And if the American military wants to come in and bomb the living daylights out of them, I mean, these people for 30 years have plagued Mexico. And now they're plaguing the United States. So she turned it down. She is doing a great job of cooperating with us on border control. So, but still, this is very, very damaging. I did say that the Democrats oppose. Marjorie Taylor Greene is the one who introduced it to the full House. But ranking member Representative Mary Gay Scanlon, a Democrat, but not an American, from Pennsylvania, said the GOP were tripping over themselves to find new ways to suck up to the president. This bill is a stupid, unserious waste of time. That's naming it the Gulf of America. A Muslim poll. You don't see too many Muslim polls. A Muslim poll. A poll of Muslims. Yeah. A poll of the Muslim people. 34 identify as Democrats. 34 identify as independents, and 33 identify as Republicans. So the idea that the Democrats have the Muslim vote.
Well, we saw that last time around.
Now, 49% opposed the president's plan to transform the Gaza Strip into a Riviera of the Middle East. But 26% agree with it, and 16 have no opinion. Now, after that, they're all pro-Trump. They are in favor of deporting illegal immigrants, 43 to 33. They're in favor of additional oil exploration in the United States, 44 to 25. They're in favor of removing taxes on tipped income, 62-12. However,
You want a bad number? 29% support Hamas. 14% support Israel. And 44% neither side. 1/3 support for a massive homicidal terrorist group is very, very dangerous. That's all. That would be as if in the heyday of the mafia, 30% of the Italian community supported the mafia. No way. 5%, maybe 6%.
I think you have a clouded.
No, I don't. I know the history of the mafia better than anybody. I'll tell you the thing that really is. I'm not sure we talked about it on this show, but the Supreme Court has now allowed the Trump transgender ban to proceed in the military. 6-3 decision, reversing a whole string of anti-American Democrat judges appointed by Democrats who ruled against it from the Ninth Circuit. So you knew the odds were 9 out of 10 it would be reversed because it came from the Ninth Circuit. There's a very, very strange article in the Wall Street Journal that I'm not going to cover, but it's kind of funny, tongue-in-cheek. I don't think she writes it that way. Trump tariffs are a green victory. And the writer, Amy Chan, points out that the operation of these tariffs is going to, in her view, reduce significantly the amount of whatever they think happens. But climate's still going to change. The New York City ACS, Administration for Children's Services, was an agency that I created, and I created it because of a very, very tragic death that happened during my administration when I first came into office. And I've regretted forever not having reformed it fast enough to save the life of Elisa Izquierdo. Elisa was the child of a Cuban and Puerto Rican American. The mother was very, very troubled. The father was a very, very good father who brought the child up for a few years, but then I believe he died. And they gave the child to the extremely sick mother, whose 2 earlier children have been taken away from her and never given back to her. And basically, she killed Elisa. And it happened during the course. There's Elisa right there. Elisa died in 1995. As a result of that, I said, I looked at what they had done in that and some other cases, and I said, we can't do this anymore. This can't happen again. So I took one of my best friends and my commissioner of investigation and a great lawyer, Howard Wilson, and I said, I want you to look at this. You got a month and tell me how to change it. And immediately he said, well, take it out from under the welfare agency, because all they do is pay attention to giving away freebies to the people who don't work. And all of the emphasis goes on that. And when they have to take money for kickbacks and stealing and everything else, they take it from the children. The children are like a low priority in the agency. The big welfare dollars are the big priority, because that's where you can make, the kickbacks and everything else. You got to understand New York City government. So he said, you got to make it a singular agency. And the key to this is who runs it. And I went and convinced Nick Scoppetta, who was a former deputy mayor, a former commissioner of investigation, a former assistant U.S. attorney, a former assistant district attorney, and a foster child himself. And Nick was 10 years my senior and my boss when I worked with the NAB Commission. And I became very close to him, and I knew Nick's dedication to foster children. And when I told Howard I was going to ask Nick to do it, he said he'll never do it because it's a step way down. He said, he's the deputy mayor. He'll be I said, it's in his heart.
Nick took over, he established the Administration for Children's Services, and within 2 years, it became a national model of how to deal with this. And he left it that way, and they've ruined it. They've ruined it. The New York Post has a very, very important, this is what she should get a Pulitzer Prize for, not Russian collusion. The New York Post has a very, very important article. There have been 7 children under the care of Administration for Children that died this year. Now, that's what we know about. Their records are secret. They have to have changed this back. One of the changes we made was more transparency in their records. So these creeps have changed a lot of this back. And if you look at these children, it is absolutely. I just don't know. I don't know how to describe this. If it doesn't make you cry, you're not a human. Here are the 7 that died this year. There's Naza Million, the boy and his. This is the most recent one. That the boy and his mother, Lisa Cotton, were found dead. He was 8 years old inside their Bronx apartment on April 18th. Only Promise Cotton, 4, was alive, having survived on chocolate. The 38-year-old mom had been under ACS supervision, and caseworkers knocked and left 2 days before the grisly discovery. These dead bodies were there maybe for 2 weeks. And this poor kid, this 4-year-old, was crawling around the apartment looking for chocolate to keep himself alive. And they knock on the door, but they wouldn't ask the police to knock it down. Now, inside there is a woman who's under ACS supervision, which means she had been either accused of or in the kind of court they have convicted of child abuse because her child had been taken away from her for a while. So you've got a head case inside there, and she's not there. Of course, you get the police to open the door, go in. Among other things, even if the mother's not there, it'll give you a look at how the mother is maintaining the apartment that might tell you something about whether you made the right decision in giving the kid to this nut job. And they are on the side of giving the kids to the nut jobs. They say family reunion. I'm sorry. A person like in Elisa's case, Elisa Escuero, the mother already had 2 kids taken away from her permanently. I mean, they already made the decision that she can't, and she killed Elisa. And the city gave her Elisa to kill. There shouldn't be like totems. Family reunion. Family reunion with a murderer? Of course, family reunion. But not with a dangerous person who's had children taken away because they're dangerous. Then Brian Santiago, he was found dead in a Bronx housing project next to his mother, Charlene Santiago, 39. Both had starved to death. The mom was under ACS investigation and had temporarily lost custody of the youngster. No one knows quite why Brian was with her. She had actually lost custody, and somehow somebody gave it back to her. And she starved him to death, and she died. Ariel Gonzalez, 4 months, Bronx baby boy, was rushed to Lincoln Hospital with severe cocaine intoxication, where he was pronounced dead. And neighbors said that ACS had been investigating the mother, who was obviously a drug addict. And then we have Jamik Modlin, 4. He starved to death in his Harlem apartment on October 13, 2024. Authorities said the boy starved to death after his parents locked the food in kitchen cabinets. His parents had been the subject of 4 prior, that's Jamik there, 4 prior ACS investigation. 4. Now, you don't find out what the substance of those investigations were, because this material is kept private. And when it becomes a matter of public issue, it's supposed to be made public, or they changed that. Joseph Heben, who was 1 month, starved to death inside the family's home on Staten Island, where he was found this last July 20th. Despite reports that the family was under ACS investigation, the agency refused to provide any details. Gisele Mirabal, 11 months, the Bronx girl, drowned in the bathtub in the family's apartment with both parents under ACS investigation. He was still in the water when police arrived. The girl's death was ruled a homicide. And finally, Daniil Timberlake, 5, died from a methadone overdose after being found foaming at the mouth in his Bronx apartment. The boy's father had a previous child endangerment arrest and was under ACS investigation. Now, up until now, Adams has defended them. Mayor, get rid of them all and bring in new people, please. This is a woke. I created this agency. I have a special interest in it. If you want to talk about it, I can tell you what to do. But you do the opposite of what they do. They don't know what they're doing. They're a bunch of woke idiots. The protection of the child comes first. I mean, and in every other way, we don't have parents' rights anymore. In Minnesota, your kid can go to Minnesota and have his penis and testicles chopped off, and you get nothing to say about it. Parents have no rights. Or in school, they have no rights. But here, where we have nutty parents, crazy parents, dangerous parents, mentally ill parents, we are on the side of giving them back, the kids back to them. Now, I just told you that the 7 deaths we know about. I know they're hiding other ones because this is all private. I also know there are situations of unbelievable abuse. Get them out. This is not a place for political assholes. It's a place for very, very strong, decent people. Now we're gonna wrap up by telling you that the May Day protests that we just had caused $500 million, and one of the major contributors to it was Soros. Tell me he's not a communist. Who, in the name of anything, would donate to May Day but a communist? His son was hanging around the Biden White House more than anybody else. And Trump, through the education department, is going to keep a record of the people who aren't paying back their student loans. And when it reaches a certain level with certain colleges, he's going to cut off student loans to those colleges, which apparently he has the power to do, but nobody's ever exercised. And thank God. Plus, Harvard doesn't need it. Harvard is probably worth more than the government. Well, and let me once again say it's a disgrace that New York now allows assisted suicide and has joined the multiple murder states. You know, murder them at the beginning of life and encourage them to end their lives quickly. So you murder them in the womb at 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months. That was cheered for in the New York legislature when it was passed. And now we encourage people, particularly if they're a little special, to kill themselves. We're going to get like Canada, where they're encouraging half of Canada to kill itself. Terrible. Yeah, a 51-year-old woman named Sophia in 2024 chose to die because her chemical sensitivity made life in her apartment unbearable. The government sees me as expendable trash, a complainer, useless and pain in the ass, Sophia said. You should do the right thing and consider Maid, a nurse told Heather Hancock of Alberta, who has cerebral palsy. You're useless. You're being selfish. You're not living. You're merely existing. That was a nurse advising Heather Hancock, who had cerebral palsy, about whether to take advantage of the Maid law, which is the kill yourself law in Canada. In Canada, 10,000 Canadians died by assisted suicide in 2021 alone. The same year that was the year it was open to people who claimed they had incurable diseases, but not terminally ill. In 2022, the number rose to 13,000. The British Columbia oncologist who diagnosed Alison Duclouseau's abdominal cancer in 2023 offered her death, but refused to authorize surgery or chemotherapy through Canada's single-payer healthcare system. She paid for out-of-pocket treatment in the U.S. and lived. So somebody should take the British Columbia oncologist who did that and put him in jail for the rest of his life or her life. In Quebec, doctors can issue advanced directives for dementia patients, so they can essentially be euthanized at request. Well, that's why you got to pray. Tomorrow, very religious day, opening of the conclave, very important decision that will affect the whole world, and may hasten our ability to bring God back into our lives, into the public square. We surely need it. Even if you don't believe in God, I tell you this all the time, it's a better world if most people do.
Any predictions? Will we have a
No, I don't think we will on the first day. It would be shocking. You get 2/3 vote, even with the time they've had. 2/3 is a lot. And each one of the candidates unless there's a candidate we don't know about, each one of the candidates has pros and cons, including Paroline. I mean, he has the con of China.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are angry about that.
right?
It's not as if that's a small issue.
Right.
That's a very, very big issue. Remember, traditional Catholics are very anti-communist. I mean, the Catholic Church would pray at part of the Latin Mass. That one of the concluding prayers was for deliverance of the world from communism, because of Our Lady of Fatima.
Right.
Pope Francis seems to have just forgotten that.
Do you think we'll see more leaks or information come out this time around with the technological advances, or will the cardinals maintain the secrecy we've seen in the past? The last conclave 12 years ago. So even since then, right, social media and technology has increased.
Unless they're hacking it, I would. There's no reason. There's no reason to believe that this group of cardinals is any more ethical or unethical than any other group. And there usually aren't leaks. You get something afterwards, like I told you, like we found out afterwards that Pope Francis had been the number 2 candidate in the conclave before he was elected.
Right.
And nobody knew that. Nobody obviously knew that when he was selected, because he wasn't even on the list of probables.
Right.
If they had known he was number 2, he'd have been right at the top,
Yeah,
right?
Right. So maybe, there might be a name that we're not hearing, or a consensus candidate after these top.
Yeah. No, I think it'll stay pretty tight. I mean, so far, I mean, they've been having discussions now for a week. So if stuff was going to get out, it'd be getting out. And all you have is navel gazing.
Right. Yeah, right.
You know, you have all the experts on, and they'll tell you we don't know.
Yeah.
And they'll also tell you this is terribly inaccurate. Many of the times, none of the leading people, they got all the wrong people.
Right. I was looking at the past 6 to 8 conclaves.
I think it will be. I think it will be among the group. I don't know if it'll be liberal, but I think it'll be among the group they're talking about, because these are all new cardinals. 2/3 to 3/4 of them were appointed by Francis, which means they've only been cardinals for 7 or 8 years. They don't know each other. So name recognition is going to be important.
Right.
And I think the cardinal will be somewhere between 72 and 78. Because I don't think they're going to want to risk a 20-year pope.
Yeah.
I've
heard that they kind of go back and forth. They have a
Yeah.
long-term pope.
But I think right now, too much is in transition. You make a mistake, you really are stuck for 25 years. I think you'll see a pope around 75, 70 to 75, 78. You're not going to see, I think that argues against Cardinal Pizzaballa, who many people like, who's 65.
Okay.
So he could be pope for 20, 30 years.
So the mayor's official prediction, black smoke tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow.
This time tomorrow when we're talking here, well,
I think. Here's what I don't remember. Do they take just one vote? I think they take just one vote tomorrow.
They have to take one vote.
they only do one or two?
Right at the beginning.
Yeah, they have to.
Do they take then 2 in the afternoon? Because they take 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon when it starts to go.
No, I think it starts slower. I think it starts 1 and then 2 and then.
Maybe if they come, yeah.
Well, the second day, it'll be 2 in the morning and 2 at night in the afternoon before. Because they usually get it over with usually in 2 to 3 days. My guess is this will get over with fast, but not the first bout. Because they've had a lot of time to talk about it.
Right.
Well, it can be very interesting. And so let's pray for them, that they make the right choice. And let's pray for all the people that are at war and all the people that are seeking freedom, like in Iran and elsewhere in the world. And let's pray for our president. His wisdom and leadership is so important, like the Pope. So we'll be back tomorrow on Lindell TV at 7, and then we'll be back here at 8, and we'll have been through the first day of the conclave. So we'll know if they make a quick decision or. God bless America. It's our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze,